Hundreds of anti-migrant protesters marched through a township outside Johannesburg on Monday in the latest sign of growing tensions over immigration in South Africa. Similar demonstrations have been reported across the country as vigilante groups push for undocumented foreigners to leave by the end of this month. The march came a day after President Cyril Ramaphosa condemned xenophobia and warned that no one should take the law into their own hands. His speech followed unrest that left at least 2 Mozambican nationals dead and prompted several countries to organise repatriation flights for their citizens.
We are not happy with the speech because it's not direct and it's not sincere, but we respect him as a leader and we hope as we go he will deliver another speech that is directed to the problems that people have.
These people are tired. All of us, we are tired. We have no money, we have no funding, we have nothing.
Let's take a look at some of these issues with Loren Landau, who's Professor of Migration and Development at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom. Welcome to DW, Professor. This isn't South Africa's first outbreak of anti-migrant violence. Why does this issue keep returning?
I think there's a few reasons. One is that the violence itself is rooted in people's frustrations with politics, with service delivery, with insecurity, and that has not gone away. I think we've also seen politicians using violence and using anti-immigrant violence as a way to promote their own interests. They have done that successfully in the past at a small scale. As South African politics becomes more and more competitive, they've started using this as a larger scale, and that is what we're seeing. People have not been prosecuted for that. They've been not held accountable. So they've learned that xenophobic violence, xenophobia, it pays.
Because the protesters we see in the news, on clips like we just saw there on South Africa's streets, they don't seem to be rich people. We heard one of them there say that they're tired, we have no money, we have no funding, we have nothing. So are there problems really linked to migrants coming to South Africa? Or, as you say, is this more about frustration with the current political system?
Their problems are very real. Unemployment is extremely high, one of the highest in the world. Inequality is among the highest in the world. People live a life that is very insecure. Is this because of migration? In a few instances, perhaps. Most of this is because of government mismanagement, poor service delivery, corruption, corrupt police, ineffective policing, etc. What's important, I think, is that people believe, and they genuinely believe, migration is behind this. And this is part of why it is such a powerful tool for mobilizing people who are indeed really suffering.
OK, so this is what we're seeing around the world. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. What matters is whether people believe it and what politicians choose to do with this issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in some ways, South Africa has led this. So while Trump was still thinking about his run, or Nigel Farage was just thinking about their run, this was something that was already happening in South Africa going back into the 2000s. What we've seen is that this is something that is now at a more national level. We have an election coming up in November in South Africa. It's hotly contested, and different groups are taking this mission to bring this message to the people and use it to try to promote their political careers and interests.
So the speech that we heard one of the protesters talk about was a speech given by the president announcing anti-immigration measures, and those measures included jailing employers who hire undocumented workers, setting up dedicated courts to speed up deportations of undocumented migrants. Do you expect these new rules to be rigorously enforced? And given what you've said, do you expect them to have any effect?
Well, they will definitely have an effect in the sense that we will see the police raiding workplaces, we'll see the police shutting down immigrant-run shops, we'll see the police going door to door, perhaps, to try to arrest people. Will this result in more people being deported? For sure. Some will be deported. It will result in a lot of human rights abuses and additional corruption. But even if they were successful, which they can't be, in getting rid of people, it's not going to create the jobs, the services, or the space in South Africa that people believe will come.
It's interesting you say that as part of the enforcement of these new rules, that there will be police raids, because one of the complaints has been that the current rules are not enforced. And indeed, the crowds that we saw there, that when riots occur, the police stand by and do nothing.
Right. I mean, well, the rules around the riots are not being enforced. And we've seen many instances in which the police have been abetting the kind of protesters, that they've been involved with raids against immigrants that are being taken on by citizens, whether it's clearing out shops or getting people thrown out of neighborhoods. So the police are ambiguous in this. They are a law enforcement agency, but in many cases, they have decided to enforce the rule of the ground, the rule of the mob, which is usually an anti-immigrant one. They will, however, choose to enforce the rules when they can do so, if it can mean more bribes, if it can mean more corruption. It's not about enforcing the law. It would be effectively about self-enrichment.
You mentioned Donald Trump in the United States, Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom, both working this anti-migration message. It's interesting to see how that message is going around the world, but it's also interesting to see black people in an African country launching protests that they are so often on the receiving end of. What does this tell us about migration as a political issue?
Right. It tells us many things about South Africa, but I think as a political issue, it tells us that when the world is facing enormous uncertainty, which is something that we face worldwide around economics, around environment, around the politics, people will tend to look inward. They will look for security by turning into the people that they feel are like them. That might be people who are of the same religion, people of the same ethnicity or language, the same nationality. That is something that is universal, that is something that is deeply human. We had hopes that South Africa might find a way of addressing this in different ways, given its history with apartheid, but South Africans are people like everybody else, and the politics, unfortunately, has tracked with the rest of the world.
The argument that we hear here in South Africa and around the world is that mainstream politicians have ignored concerns about migration for too long. Why do you think that is? Why is there that perception? Or indeed, is that perception actually reality?
Well, I think that it's very true, especially in South Africa and elsewhere in the world, in the United States, in Europe, that politicians have ignored the pain of working class people, the pain of people who have lost jobs due to changing economies, the pain people have felt as their savings go to more expensive housing. Have they ignored issues of immigration? Not really. If you look over the last 10 years in South Africa, you look at the last 10 years in the United States or Europe, immigration has been at the center. We've seen more and more enforcement. Politicians are doing a lot. Politicians are trying to control migration. The issue is they're not addressing these other issues which are driving the frustrations. And until they do that, we will continue to see this kind of scapegoating and continue to see this kind of potential violence.
And continue to see this issue being taken up by mainstream parties taking a harder stance because it's a popular issue.
Absolutely. I think what we've seen globally and in South Africa is that this is the easiest way. If you don't have a real plan, you don't have something to offer about how are we going to get out of the economic malaise, how will we make your lives more secure, this is an easy thing. And it's one in which you will never solve, so you can keep fighting and keep doing more and more. Eventually, it will come around where people realize this is not delivering what we need, and hopefully at that time, we can find another way.
We've seen Nigeria, Ghana and Mozambique are amongst the countries helping citizens to leave South Africa because of concerns for their safety. How damaging is this for South Africa's standing on the continent?
This is enormously damaging in both the short and the long term. Already we've seen the economic effects, tourism being canceled, trade being canceled. A lot of the immigrants that are leaving are business owners who employ others, employ South Africans, pay taxes. They are in the public service. All of these are going to hurt South Africa in the short term. In the long term, we're going to see decline of trade. It's really hurting the brand. And what we've seen is I think coming is direct sanctions from Nigeria and other countries who are going to try to prevent South Africans from visiting, or certainly try to prevent South Africans from investing and trading with them. South Africa's primary trade is on the continent. shutting down these kind of routes, whether it's formal or informal, is going to hurt South Africa. And ironically, it's going to hurt employment for the very people who are protesting today.
And so, do you see this as a problem being confined to South Africa on the African continent, or can you see anti-migration politics taking hold across the continent or indeed anywhere else?
I think it's going to look different in South Africa. South Africa has a very vibrant, if we want to call it that, protest culture, protest of sometimes quite culture of quite violent protest. But we've seen similar moves in Kenya, as Somalis and others have been stigmatized. We've seen similar moves in Botswana and elsewhere. And of course, there's historical animosities between Nigeria and Ghana, which has resulted in people being evicted. So I think this is something that we will see as countries are more and more insecure, as the economy and the environment makes people anxious about their futures. We will see this. Often it will be against other citizens, people from different ethnic groups, but also as migration continues against immigrants.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that so clearly, Professor. Professor Loren Landau from the University of Oxford.